Anyone who says that capitalism is failing is either lying or being misled. Capitalism works. Crony capitalism doesn't. And that's what we have going on right now in America. Crony capitalism. Actually, I think we're actually into crony socialism now. It is rampant in Washington, and politicians on both sides of the aisle are guilty of it. This is why the politicians go corrupt so rapidly. These guys come into office as members of the middle class. They're just like you. But when they leave, they are multimillionaires. Now, how exactly does that work? How many years on my program have we asked, how did John Conyers make so much money? How did Charlie Rangel, who's a middle-class working guy who went and he was a war hero, how has he all of a sudden got houses everywhere as a public servant? It's called insider trading, and in D.C. it is legal. Tonight, I want to spend a few minutes talking to you, showing you how insane the insider trading is. And when people say, well, why would they want to do that? Why would somebody want to collapse the system? Why would they? Because they're building the infrastructure. They have a playground that you don't have. And wait until you see how George Soros has made his money in the last 18 months. Peter Schweizer is the William J. Casey Research Fellow at the Hoover Institution. He is the author of Throw Them All Out. If you haven't read this book, you need to read this book. It is, it's amazing. I warn you, not good for your blood pressure. But it will show you that this is not a Democratic problem. It is on both sides. How you doing?
Good to see you.
Good to see you, Peter. Okay, so where do you want to start? You want to start with all of them, or you want to start with Soros?
It's up to you. We could maybe start with a couple of historic events to kind of put everything to relief and give it a timeline.
Go for it.
All right. Let's start with the 2008 financial crisis, if we could. And we'll try to visualize it here to make a little bit more sense of it. Going back in time to the financial crisis, people will recall that in mid-September there were concerns about where things might be going. Well, on Capitol Hill, there was a briefing put together by Hank Paulson, the Treasury Secretary, and Ben Bernanke, who was the Fed Chairman. Now, they had a series of briefings and meetings with congressional leaders. These were closed-door briefings to show you how secretive they were. You had to leave your BlackBerry and you had to leave your cell phone at the door because it was that sensitive.
This is when? Right
this
before
is September of 2008.
Before TARP.
That's right, before TARP. Now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is still over 11,000, so people are a little bit nervous, but panic has not set in yet.
Got it.
And on the night of September the 18th, they hold this briefing at 7 o'clock at night. Members of Congress are there. Let me just give you an example of what happens. At this meeting, according to Paulson's memoir, they describe to the congressmen that we are facing financial calamity. They tell them that the stock market's going to go down at least 20%. They explain that we could be facing a worldwide financial crisis and that we need to take action pretty strong and pretty soon. Pretty dramatic statements. According to Paulson, the members of Congress that were there were ashen-faced and stunned at what they were hearing. Well, the next morning, one of those people who was at that meeting is Spencer Baucus. He's a Republican from Alabama, the ranking Republican then, now the chairman of the House Financial Services Committee. He takes that information and the next morning shorts the market. Now, for those who don't look at options trading or don't understand it, what shorting means is you're betting or knowing that the market's going to go down.
That's crazy that's allowed to happen.
Yes, and he does it the next day. He buys something called ProShares Ultra Short.
Keep going.
Which is a leveraged options trade. So he literally is betting that that the market is going to go down, and he makes $10,000 off of that one transaction just that one day. Now, Spencer Baucus is not alone. He's not the only one who's at that meeting. And there are 10 people at that meeting
who end up... Why don't you hand me the whole stack? I'll get the whole stack. You keep going.
All right.
I'll hold the stack.
There are 10 members of Congress and Senate who are at those meetings, and a lot of those end up selling a lot of their shares based on this private briefing they got. Dick Durbin, who is on the subcommittee for financial services in the Senate and the second-ranking Senate Democrat, he decides, based on this information, to sell his holdings to avoid losses, and he does. He sells more than $70,000 worth of his investments, which for Dick Durbin is a lot of money.
Okay, so hang on, just so you know, you haven't been allowed, you don't know. You don't know. They're still playing a game with you. You don't know this is coming because you'll freak out. So you are going to receive the losses. They're pulling their money out, or even worse, they're betting against the market. We have to figure it out. I have to tell you. This is what I think is coming. They know. Okay.
That's a great point, Glenn, because right now, while they're doing this, the Dow is over 11,000. In a month, it's going to be down to 8,000.
My gosh.
And a lot of these guys have gotten out of the market or short of the market, and they're actually making money on this calamity. Now, here's what's interesting about what Durbin does. He takes and sells his shares in stock, and then a few days later, he buys shares in Berkshire Hathaway. Berkshire Hathaway is the investment fund that is run by Warren Buffett. This is an interesting purchase because he buys this on September the 21st. The next day, on September the 22nd, it's publicly announced that Berkshire Hathaway is buying a big stake in Goldman Sachs. And, of course, Goldman Sachs gets a...
Who did this?
This is Dick Durbin. Dick Durbin sells all his shares, and then on September the 21st buys Berkshire Hathaway stock, and then the next day Goldman Sachs is purchased in part.
Any doubt in your mind that... No.
None whatsoever. And they get a 10% dividend. So he's made a great timed bet getting out of the market and then making the right decision and buying Berkshire Hathaway.
Who would ever want to lose this job?
You wouldn't want to.
You would never want to lose this
That's
job because
right.
it's all legal.
That's exactly right.
Right. And this is why they stay in there and they never get out because and then nobody ever stands against it because everybody else, they know I'm never going to change the law.
That's right.
I'm never going to get these guys to vote against any of this crap.
Yeah.
And everybody else is doing it. Who has the character? Can you name, is there one person that has the character that you have seen that is not playing this game?
There are some members of Congress that, out of principle, don't trade stock. Michelle Bachmann does not trade stock, for example. Ron Paul is not an active or aggressive stock trader. There are people in both parties that don't do it.
Good.
But there's nothing illegal in doing this.
I know.
And here's what's frightening. There was a study done, Glenn, where they looked at 6,000 stock trades by senators. And what they found is the average corporate insider beats the market by 5% a year. That's pretty good.
So in other words, somebody who's in the know in the stock market
Exactly.
business.
They beat the market by 5%. Hedge funds, guys like Soros, the guys that make big bucks, they beat the market by 7 to 8% a year. United States senators beat the market by 12% a year. So either they're a lot more brilliant than we ever give them credit for,
and we know that's not true. They're dumb as a box of rocks.
So there's something fishy going on. Now, they weren't the only ones that did it. We had a gentleman named John Kerry, and his wife, of course, are very wealthy, also make some interesting well-timed trades. After the market drops, they buy shares in Citigroup in October. What's interesting about this is they buy them literally a couple of days before it's publicly announced that Citigroup is going to get $50 billion worth of bailout money. You can imagine what the stock of Citigroup did on that knowledge. And there were numerous other financial transactions.
So when he bought it, it's all on the way down because everybody's like, I don't know what's going to survive. No, everybody's getting out of, what was Citigroup at a share?
It was, at that point, I believe, down at about $8 a share.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
When he bought it, it was 8. What did it go back up to?
It doubled. It doubled after the Citigroup bailout.
How's your 401k? Did you double your money? Did you double? Because he doubled his money.
And there's the same thing with Bank of America. He did the same thing with Bank of America. So these are people that are designing the bailout, getting access to inside information, and they're buying into the banks that they are designing the bailout for.
It's legalized bribery.
Yes. The example would be, Glenn, is if we allowed professional athletes to bet on games in which they played. We never let them do that. But this is far worse than that, and it goes on all the time. Claire McCaskill does the same thing. She joins Senator Durbin in buying Berkshire Hathaway stock at a very well-timed case. So this just gives you a nutshell of what happened in 2008 during the financial crisis.
How much time